Jean-Michel Basquiat was an awesome painter that created experiences. Perhaps Jean-Michel was the greatest painter of all time. Let's tell this story further. So Jean-Michel was born in Brooklyn, New York in the 1960s. He was the second of 4 children, 1 brother and 2 sisters. His father was born in Haiti and his mother was born in Brooklyn, and he was raised Catholic. This is significant because religion was partly reflected in his art. And Jean-Michel found art early. His mother would take him to local museums, and you can visualize Jean-Michel's imagination being stimulated in these environments. So Jean-Michel's mum enrolled him to the Brooklyn Museum of Art. Now, the Brooklyn Museum of Art identifies itself as having the following mission: to bring people together through art and experiences that inspire celebration, compassion, courage, and the will to act. It would seem that all these elements were planting the seeds of his artistic greatness. Jean-Michel, at 7 years old, suffered a car crash while playing on a New York street. Now, this was not a minor situation because he spent months in hospital. In this period, Jean-Michel's mother gives him a copy of the book Henry Gray's Anatomy of the Human Body. Now, this book is considered a guide for the human body, which some dub the Doctor's Bible, so it's held in very high regard. And of course, one should not underestimate the power of a great book. Now, the author Henry Gray was an anatomist and surgeon, and his illustrations are brilliant details of the human body. This book inspired Jean-Michel on a deeper level. In the hospital, he digested this book, metaphorically speaking, and this inspiration would carry forward in his artistic expressions. So there's some very interesting influences here. We have the mother encouraging him to enroll into the Brooklyn Art Museum and influencing his passion for art. We have the influence of theism. We have the car crash, and we have the introduction and fascination with anatomy. And then we can also include the influence, the immediate influence of Brooklyn. Here is a valid question. What was SAMO, and why is it relevant to Jean-Michel Basquiat? Now, SAMO fundamentally was an art collaboration with artist Al Diaz, who was a first-generation graffiti artist. Now, to me, SAMO was poetry with graffiti, and the tag SAMO would be seen in New York from 1978 to 1980. Now, SAMO would be used on buildings, toilets, elevators, and the train. Jean-Michel and Al Diaz would come up with sayings and statements because this was creativity, and it was unique, it was different. Now, at the time, people recognized the work, but the identity behind SAMO was concealed, and SAMO was gaining popularity. For example, Keith Haring, another great artist that was dominating the scene, was a keen observer of this work. Anyway, in 1979, Jean-Michel revealed himself as part of the SAMO collaboration. Jean-Michel also killed SAMO, announcing SAMO is dead. Despite this declaration, SAMO would be resurrected decades later by collaborator Diaz. Now, there are questions, of course, like what was the impact of SAMO? Well, SAMO was powerful, it was significant, and it was different to everything else at the time. And it was another step in Jean-Michel's evolution. In the exhibition New York New Wave, curated by Diego Cortez, Emilio Mazzini brought 10 paintings, and this was significant. Enter Anina, the art dealer that welcomed Jean-Michel to her gallery. She provided him space and provided him with raw materials needed to create art. This was another important and significant part of the puzzle. Also, the article Radiant Child by Art Forum brings international exposure. The ball is moving, and it is moving pretty fast. Jean-Michel's first independent show was in March 1982, and it was a success. There was artistic validation, and there was economic success as well. As things moved forward, Bruno became his art dealer in 1982. Now, Bruno had opened his first gallery in 1963. Bruno was significant as he championed key figures in the art movement, which was evolving, and it was evolving pretty fast. Now, art dealers were like the key in this period of time. Remember, there was no Instagram or YouTube for marketing and digital outlets. Galleries and art dealers were crucial, and Jean-Michel's career was like a fast car. It was like a train arriving to a destination of creative brilliance. Andy Warhol was an important chapter to Jean-Michel. Now, despite this, there is a false narrative that Andy Warhol created Jean-Michel, and this is inaccurate. Hip-hop pioneer Fab Five Freddy clears up this miscommunication in an interview. Because Jean-Michel was established before he collaborated with Andy Warhol, and Bruno was part of putting that collaboration together. However, let's clarify, Andy Warhol was a leading figure in pop art, known for the Campbell soup cans, Marilyn Monroe, and creating a whole new genre of contemporary art. To put simply, Andy Warhol was very important in this scene. But how did Andy and Jean-Michel meet? Well, they first met at a restaurant in 1979, where Warhol purchased one of his postcards for $1. The next time they would meet would be a formal introduction, which led to a close friendship. This formal meeting inspired the painting of both Jean-Michel and Andy Warhol. And this would lead to a collaboration, and you had paintings such as Arm & Hammer 2 and one of my favourites, Untitled General Electric 2. Now, some would say that Jean-Michel brought Andy Warhol back into the spotlight. So how did this situation end? Unfortunately, their exhibition in 1985 was heavily criticised by the media, and this may have damaged their professional and personal relationship. Now, when Andy Warhol died, this allegedly made Basquiat even more reclusive. Some suggested he considered giving up painting, and that to me confirms how strong their connection was. Metaphorically speaking, the house of Jean-Michel and Andy Warhol is still prevalent today. Some of Jean-Michel's paintings deal with race, and this is never more prevalent than in the painting Defacement. Now, this painting is about the death of Michael Stewart, who is an aspiring artist and model. This painting addressed the police brutality of that terrible incident. This death was somewhat personal because Jean-Michel shared a circle of friends with Michael. Now, this painting Defacement was never sold because this painting was not about money. This painting captured a horrible and disturbing moment in history. And this painting is now owned by Nina Clemente, which is Keith Haring's goddaughter. Now, Jean-Michel was inspired by African art, and he referenced black kings such as boxer Jack Johnson. Now, in 1984, Jean-Michel has another exhibition of small paintings. The show is successful economically, but gets mixed reviews. Now, in 1985, Jean-Michel appears on the cover of the New York Times magazine. This article points out that Jean-Michel had nowhere to sleep 5 years ago, but is now selling paintings for $25,000. That is quite a remarkable evolution. They describe his paintings as, quote, edgy and raw, unquote, and they compliment his implementation of colour and composition. Of course, this magazine was extending his reach to new audiences. The article states he had, quote, a taste of Picasso, end of quote. Jean-Michel was still evolving, and Jean-Michel was still growing. Despite Jean-Michel's successes, people were worried about his drug use, and he goes to Hawaii to try and beat his habit. In 1988, unfortunately, Jean-Michel dies from a drug overdose. He was only 27 years old. This makes Jean-Michel part of the 27-year-old club. But let's talk about his legacy. Jean-Michel had a massive cultural impact. His influence is found in all disciplines: visual artists, music, filmmakers, fashion homes, etc. Also, one of his works sold for $110 million, and that is quite remarkable. And Jean-Michel dominated a white dominating art scene. Metaphorically speaking, he created his own house in the art neighborhood, and his art was layered with different meanings. There was so much to enjoy, so much to appreciate. And Jean-Michel's fingerprints are all over hip-hop, as they should be. For example, Jay-Z has mentioned Jean-Michel in lyrics, J. Cole has mentioned Jean-Michel in lyrics, and rapper Nas has mentioned Jean-Michel in lyrics. Perhaps this is kings mentioning the king, but not just a king of what some would call Neo-Expressionism, but a king of the art galaxy. In conclusion, Jean-Michel Basquiat was one of the great painters. He was the king of Neo-Expressionism and a king of art. Fueled by New York, Grey's Anatomy, museums, religion, the crash, etc., Jean-Michel created artistic excellence. SAMO was a street revolution appreciated by other kings such as Keith Haring, and the exhibitions were powerful and sensational. And his work with Andy Warhol, which was criticized at the time, but ironically has passed the test of time. And it has been reported that the painting Untitled was the 6th most expensive painting in the world. It was bought for $110 million. Now, the painting Defacement was a statement on race, and the Black Kings painting was also a statement on race. Speaking of race, Jean-Michel states, quote, "I am not a black artist, I am an artist," end of quote. This to me shows that Jean-Michel did not want to be defined by the color of his skin, but by the color of his work. Now, Jean-Michel was raised middle class, but then became homeless at a young age. This is an interesting paradox, the equation that he did not come from the streets, but he was in the streets, literally. Now, Jean-Michel had a passion for jazz. Indeed, he had a collection of over 3,000 records. And what intrigued me about Jean-Michel, to me, was that he was an artist in every sense of the word. I mean, there was no limitations. He drew on windows, doors, paper, walls, canvases, etc. It was like every physical space was an opportunity to create art. Let's say that again. Every physical space was an opportunity to create art. Also, Jean-Michel had a great visual vocabulary in his artwork. Here are some examples. Famous, fake teeth, Hollywood Africans, 200 yen, blue ear, freezing. From random words to statements to metaphors, Jean-Michel was rich in the visual language universe. And I've thought to myself, what was the process of Jean-Michel making his work? Did he make it quickly, or did he make it slowly, or was it a combination of the two? And there is a statement from Jean-Michel that says, quote, "I don't think about art when I'm working, I try to think about life," end of quote. In the literal sense, Jean-Michel absorbs life, and in this absorption process, he creates art.